It didn't sound like fighting. Fighting is noise, anger. This was the sound of consumption, a guttural, wet, tearing noise that started in the blackest part of the night. I was down, flat on the frozen clay, my ankle screaming where it snapped when I tripped on that root. The flashlight rolled, casting a sickly, dancing yellow beam across the undergrowth. In its light, the nightmare was real. 2 coyotes, pack hunting. They weren't there for the old man. I was just the appetizer. The large one, the mangy one with the yellow eyes. It dropped its head, muscles coiling for the spring toward my throat. I couldn't move. All I could think of was my daughter's face. And that's when the other scream cut the air.
This wasn't home. This was just where I happened to stop moving when the world got too heavy. The cabin was a rotten husk of pine and regret, tucked miles deep into the hills. It suited me. I didn't want conversation, and the trees don't ask about before. Every day was a battle with an enemy that had no face, an enemy that lived inside my skull. Just a bottle of cheap bourbon, a flickering propane lamp, and silence so loud it made my teeth ache. I was preparing to fade away, just another casualty of old wars that never really ended, just marinated in solitude until they consumed the host. I was done with the world, and it was done with me. He just appeared one Tuesday when the wind was howling. He was the ghost in the barn, a flash of white socks moving silently among the dust motes and stored hay. He wasn't begging, he wasn't desperate. He was a survivor, like me, but more honest about it. This cat, this shadow as I took to thinking of him, carried the history of this place on his skin. One ear was ripped, an old wound from a fight with God knows what, and his fur was matted, stained with grease and red clay. We stared at each other for a long moment. No trust, just an acknowledgement of mutual existence. We were both shadows in our own ways. It wasn't pity. Pity's useless. It was a deal. The mice were everywhere in the barn, ruining the little grain I kept. One night, after watching him stalk a field mouse with lethal, silent grace, I cracked the seal on a can of tuna. I set it on the cold concrete. Then I backed up, all the way back to the other end of the barn, near the door. It took him 20 minutes of watching me, the potential threat. When he finally moved, it was like water. He ate quickly, with savage efficiency, never taking his eyes off me. He didn't say thanks, and I didn't expect him to, but the deal was struck. The nightmares were worse in winter. The cold must set the ghost to shivering. I woke up screaming again, the sound tearing through the silent cabin, sweat soaking my undershirt despite the freezing air. When I stopped, gasping for breath, listening to my heart try to burst from my chest, I felt a weight. Not heavy, just present. He was sitting on the end of the cot. He wasn't touching me, but he was there, staring at me in the darkness, his golden eyes reflecting the minimal moonlight. It was the first time I hadn't been completely alone in that terror for 40 years. He didn't care about the nightmares. He just knew the air was disturbed. We fell into a rhythm. He cleared the barn of the mice and the snakes. I started splitting the good firewood. We both worked alone, but we worked. The winter was the hardest on record.
But for the first time in my life, the isolation felt different. He was the only creature I'd met in decades who didn't ask for a piece of me, who didn't want my pension or my apologies. I'd find him sitting on the roof of the old truck, grooming his battle-scarred paws, watching me swing the axe. He validated me. He showed me that you could be broken, you could be scarred, and you could still be useful.
The night I almost did it, I was sitting at the table, the 1911 in my hand. The weight was familiar, comforting. It offered an end to the noise. I was rubbing the scar on my jawline, feeling the cold steel. I was done. Then I heard the scratch, not soft, demanding. I looked down. Shadow was looking up, his eyes locked on mine. When I didn't move, he leaped straight onto my lap. This cat who wouldn't let me within 10 feet was nesting on my tired legs, and he purred, a deep, seismic, rattling vibration. I dropped the gun. I put both hands in his filthy fur, and I just cried. I hadn't cried since Da Nang.
Spring came, and so did the neighbors. Folks you only see twice a year. They knew me, or the legend of the crazy silent vet, but they'd heard about the cat. They saw us working the land together. The hardware store owner brought out a bag of high-grade kibble for the mouser. He said it with a wink. The neighbor kid, usually terrified, asked me how Shadow got the scar on his ear. When I actually answered him, told him it was from a badger. It wasn't, but he didn't know. I realized the silence had been broken. We weren't just two ghosts. We were a part of something again. He made me approachable.
For one shining month, it felt like normal. Life wasn't good, but it was acceptable. We spent evenings on the porch. I had my coffee, he had his kibble.
I'd actually talk sometimes. Told him about the rain. Told him how the air smelled. Told him about my wife before she passed. He'd sit there, his tail twitching, listening as if he understood every single word. Maybe he did. Maybe he knew that the sound of my voice was more for me than him. He made the cabin feel like a home. I thought maybe I could actually do this. Survive. Nature, though, it has no sympathy for your normal. The sign was subtle. A change in the air, a different quality to the darkness. Shadow knew it first. He stopped staying out all night. He would stand at the door, sniffing the wind, his hair standing up, his muscles tense. I heard it, a different kind of howling. It wasn't the lonely wind. It was a pack, hungry. They were coming down from the mountains, the hard winter driving them to desperation. I checked the rifle, found my flashlight, but a part of me knew that something was inevitable. You can't outrun nature forever.
And there it was, the snap, the fall, the scream. I was down, useless. The alpha coyote was lunging. This was it. And then, a force smaller than a boot, but 10 times as fast, exploded from the dark. Shadow. He didn't just attack, he launched. A feral, demonic fury of claws, teeth, and white socks. He hit the coyote square in the face. The scream he let out was not from this world. He was a black and white blur, shredding flesh, blinding the beast. The coyote shrieked, a sound of confusion and pain. Shadow was a maniac. He gave me 2 seconds. 2 seconds to grab the rifle.
The shot rang out, echoing through the empty woods.
The other coyote fled. The main one was dead. But Shadow, he was 10 feet away. He wasn't moving. I dragged myself across the frozen clay, ignoring the agony in my ankle, pulling my body with my elbows. I found him in the beam of the rolling flashlight. He was a broken thing. One side of his face was destroyed. One gold eye was gone. I scooped his cold, limp body against my chest, and I started crawling again, crawling back toward the truck, toward the road. It took me an hour. I didn't feel my ankle. I only felt the heat fading from him.
I don't know who I called. I just needed someone to fix him. I must have broken my silence. When the dawn broke, I was sitting in the 24-hour vet clinic in the town 50 miles away. I had no money, just a dead coyote pelt and a desperate heart. They had me waiting in the back room, the one with the quiet lighting. And then I looked up. The neighbor kid was there, the hardware store guy, the lady from the diner. They were just sitting, waiting with me. The word had gone out. The community didn't care about the silent vet. They were waiting for the barn cat who fought a wolf. The vet said it was a miracle. A cliche, but true. Shadow had lost the eye. He had internal bleeding, a broken jaw. He was a mess. They kept him on oxygen for 3 days. On the 4th, I was allowed in the recovery ward. He was tiny in that metal cage, surrounded by tubes and monitor beeps. I put my finger, just my index finger, through the grate. He opened his remaining golden eye. It was hazy from the meds, but when he saw me, his tail, just the tip, it twitched. Once, twice. The purring started, a quiet rattlesnake buzz that filled the whole clinical room. He knew I was there. We were both alive.
It's a different kind of quiet now. I didn't go back to the cabin. The neighbors found me an old caretaker's house near the hardware store. Shadow is the official town mascot now. He only has one eye, and his jaw is forever slightly crooked, giving him a perpetually grumpy look. He doesn't go outside much anymore. He sits on my lap, safe. We watch the rain from the inside of a house that doesn't leak. My flashbacks haven't gone, and his one good eye is always watching the door. We aren't healed, not really. But we aren't shadows. We are family, and that's a new kind of war. One we might actually win.